Hello. Today we're going to be looking at 1 Chronicles chapter 21 verse 8. And what has happened, the background for this is that David has ordered a census to be taken of all of Israel to determine how big his armies are, how big of a fighting force he has. So he sends out his general Joab to take a census and figure that out. And Joab protested, and he tried to tell him, why do you want to take a census and trust in yourself instead of God? But David said, go out and do it. And they spent almost 2 years, so I think it was 1 year and 9 months, taking this census. And Joab comes back to David and he gives him the report. David has just gotten the report. In 1 Chronicles 21:8 he says, then David prayed, I have sinned badly in what I have just done, substituting statistics for trust. Forgive my sin. I've been really stupid. That's kind of a informal translation, but that's from the Message. But anyway, the point is that David didn't trust in God. Instead, he began to count his worldly kingdom and his possessions as his power. And that's what really mattered to him at that time when he made that decision. So he put his faith in himself and in his armies instead of in God. So bringing that home, how often do we do that ourselves? How often do we check and recheck our bank accounts and our budgets and our projections and our 5-year plans and our 10-year plans and put our trust in that? And if something goes wrong with one of those items, then we're really up in arms and worried and we don't know what we're going to do. But all that's doing is exactly what David did, is putting our trust in what we have and in our possessions and in our plans instead of in God's power and in God's ability to provide for us. Now sure, we have to be good stewards of what God has given us, and that's one of his mandates, is that we manage what he has given us properly. But that doesn't mean that we trust in what he's given us. We trust in the one who gave it. He's the provider. He's the one that we have to trust in. So our plans alone aren't going to get us what we want. We may think that, oh, we've done so well, and look at how I've done. But if that's what we think, then we're really misunderstanding God's part in our history. And if we're trusting in our plans, we're really misunderstanding how much better God's plans will be for us. So we have to trust in him. We have to do what he says. What happened after this is David asked for forgiveness, but back then there was no forgiveness through the blood of Jesus. They weren't under that new covenant. They weren't under the old covenant, so there was punishment. And God sent the prophet Gad to David and said, you've sinned, you've asked for forgiveness for it, but there's going to be punishment. And he said you can either choose to have a famine for 3 years, to be chased by your enemies for 3 months, or to have an epidemic for 3 days. And David said, well, I'm going to choose to submit to God and his mercy rather than be punished by men. So he chose the epidemic, and 70,000 Israelites died as a result of that. So there was a severe consequence for David trusting in himself and in his armies and in his possessions instead of trusting in God. Now thankfully we don't have to worry as much about that because we do have forgiveness, but there are still consequences of our sin. And if we trust in ourselves and if we sin by not trusting in God, then the consequences are are not in his best plan for us. So that's what we've got to watch out for.